somebody willing to take it apart and do it enough ways to figure out what's creating this inverse relationship between, you know, turning these detectors on and off. And I mean, it's just, to me, it's the answer's there somewhere.
And then him. Are you familiar with David Bohm? Bohm?
Sold nuclear night a pair of shoes, you know, little black shiny shoes, little black shiny ones.
He was a physicist. He worked with Einstein at Princeton.
Weren't they the two guys who were fighting all the time? No, that was the other guy. What's his name?
Niels Bohr.
Bohr, right? Yeah, okay. So anyway, bomb guy. So what? Just get why? I hate people who preface. Well, did you ever hear about blah 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 blah? But just get to your point.
My point is that he has a model that's different than the Copenhagen theory, and that it gives the same experimental results. But he basically came along with it like 30 years after the Copenhagen theory had been established, so they just ignored him.
All these interpretations, to me, like I said, don't mean a hell of a lot until first. Why don't we, like I said, if we do the experiment with it, changing the gun, you know, whatever's firing the electrons, because another, you know, there's so many little suspicious things you can, there's so many ways you can pick apart this thing and say, well, this is might be why this is causing this effect. You know, how far apart the slits are, how far away the gun is. I mean, there's just so many factors. And I'm just saying, just by doing the experiments and figuring out how it changes when you change these factors is going to give us the answer. And I just don't know why nobody's doing it. I mean, why wouldn't they be curious? I don't. That just stuns me that no one's doing the experiment.
Well, one thing that's been done is they've fired one electron at a time at the double slit and still got an interference pattern that built up gradually.
I thought it was photons, not electrons.
Yeah, it could have been photons. It can be either, and it can be other particles.
I mean, it works with either one, but that's, you know, that's, to me, that's, yeah, they've done that variation, but there hasn't been any, you know, those are simple. They turn the detectors on, they turn the detectors off. My point is move the detectors in front and behind the the slits and see what happens. I mean, there's all kinds of different things you can do, and I haven't read anywhere that those things have been done. You know, they might have been done somewhere. I'm just saying it's not part of the accessible research.
Well, they've put a detector by one of the slits, or you could say both of the slits, to figure out where the particle's going, which path it's taking. And when they do that, the interference pattern goes away.
I know, but my point is what happens if you put it after the slits? What if you put the detector after the slits? What, you know, I mean, these are just basic questions. What if the detectors are a certain distance away from the slits? I mean, what is it's the interference with the slits themselves, the matter that make up the slits? Because if the slits are narrow enough, the density of the material the photons are going through is going to create interference right there, because they're going to go through a magnetic field created by that slit material. So, but anyway, I don't want to get into all the physics of it. I'm just, the point I'm making is that this is a critical piece of quantum that, you know, where they go through all kinds of speculation based on this experiment. And so to me, if something's going to be a foundation for so much speculation, why isn't it rigorously taken apart and dissected? And that's very suspicious to me. It's very irritating. Yeah, well, Pyro, you can keep saying all covered, all covered. It's not covered. I've gone on YouTube because of our arguments, and I've sat there and I've searched and I've searched and I've searched, and I have not found these variations on the fucking experiment.
I think part of the problem is, like David Bohm would say, is that it's not, there's no classical analogy to these things. That's why it's so difficult to understand. There's just no classical analogy.
I think there is a classical. I think there is a very real cause and effect, real physical reason for this manifestation to take place. That the universe, and it doesn't have anything to do with two particles going through both slits and all this other bullshit. That ain't happening.
Yeah, but you have to keep in mind that it just takes one particle, and that as you keep shooting them at the experiment, the interference pattern will gradually build up. But what that means is that
Argument was
the
still going to
particles,
be, though, that when they're firing one particle that has some sort of unseen twin, okay, and it doesn't gain its reality till they actually go through the slit and hit the target and blah, 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 blah. So I'm just saying there's a whole bunch of crappy speculation built on this, and I don't care about your guy's bullshit speculation, because to me it's just as useless as anybody else's speculation until we do the fucking experiments.
well, actually, I was talking about experimental results.
I mean, but they're not useful enough. They're not. There's not enough variables. There's not enough variety in the experiments to make any to draw any conclusions. They don't undo the bullshit speculation because they haven't taken it apart enough. So people can still make up shit like, well, you do your thinking in your heart, and so you don't know that until you dissect the human. You pull a heart out and you look at it and say, no, it's just dumb muscle. It can't do anything in there but muscle stuff.
I heard David Bohm say that you could have a theory of everything and it could be correct, but you would have no way of knowing that there wasn't something else going on at a finer level.
Oh, whatever. I mean, that's why right away this guy doesn't have any credibility for me. I mean, that's just a bullshitism. It's completely pull out of your ass bullshit. Well, we could be part of just a cartoon that's running on some kind of weird projector on zircon, and the zirconians could just be laughing at our impulse waves as we think we're actually doing something, but we're not really. We're really licking at the horse of a zirconian ass horse, and I mean, you can go on forever with that crap.
And that's what he was saying. I hesitantly raised my hand because I'm not sure if I want to get kicked. Um, no, I think he was saying that, and this is relatively accepted in the scientific field, that there could be contributing factors we're unaware of. So we think there's a 1-to-1 correlation when there might be a 2-to-1 or a 3-to-1 or something like that. So we think that this is the only significant factor when in fact it might not be. That's all.
Yeah, well, my only argument is that this is something I think we can get the answer, but you got to do the experiments to get the answer, and I'm just wondering why there isn't a whole bunch of energy devoted to doing the fucking experiments. I mean, I think one of the problems with the whole thing is that when they fire these stupid particles, they don't know where that the gun isn't accurate. The gun isn't shoot straight bullets. You know, they're and this is where all this thing goes to hell, is because depending on the shape of the slit, the only particles going through the slit are the ones that are going straightest. All the eccentric particles are on the periphery, and so you're only going to see them under certain circumstances, and maybe some of those end up going through slit number 2 when you fired them at slit number 1. But anyway, that's a whole nother point.
Well, that's the point. If you have an accurate gun where you can tell which slit it goes through, the diffraction pattern showing that it goes through both slits disappears, because as soon as any of the options on this experiment where you know which slit it goes through, it appears to just go through one or the other. It doesn't have the diffraction pattern.
That's all I'm saying. Exactly. So what I'm saying is that maybe that's because under one circumstance you're filtering for the straight line particles, and the other